This week, I thought I would walk you through a property assessment and why these are so important to any homeowner, but especially if you're new to the property. I was on a site visit last week at a house where the homeowner had purchased this maybe 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, I can't remember, but they have had full-blown renovations happening since that time, since they purchased it. And they purchased it as is. However, nobody did a full inspection of the property. So even a bigger red flag. But I want to tell you what I found and what's so critical and how I put this together. And again, if you've heard any of these other podcasts or blogs before, I use Excel spreadsheets, just the simplest bare bone basics of Excel. And I've got 3 columns on my Excel spreadsheet. The first one is the priority. What's the ranking of this particular task or assessment? What is the mechanical equipment or the item in the household that is being inspected, and what is the information about it? Now, I do a high, medium, and low priorities. And what I found is that the homeowner, even though every single appliance, kitchen appliance, and housekeeping appliance was new, the water heaters were probably 13 to 17 years old. No one's known when the last time they were flushed out and serviced and looked at gaskets and things like that, or whether they were installed per building code. So the building codes have changed. Sometimes it's really worth it to look at the pans that go underneath that and bring those up to code, because they are in your best interest to minimize damage if something like that leaks. But certainly you want to know the date that those were installed and know the life of those systems. So on a water heater, it might be 10 or 15 years. On an HVAC system, it could be 15 to 25 years. And again, if these are primary residents, they're going to realize they're going to have higher usage than a secondary home, likely. But what a lot of people don't look at are things like, for instance, last week we found out that a boiler in this home heating everything inside of this vacation home that is in a freeze zone was 32 years old. Now, no one had mentioned it. I just happened to snap a picture of that little metal tag certification, and it will tell you the date of installation or manufacturing on that, and it's usually within that year that that unit was installed. So that's pretty important information. Number one, it's the summertime now, and it's going to be less expensive to replace that boiler now than, let's say, the family visits at Christmas time. They fire that heater up 24/7 while they're visiting and all the kids are there. That's when it's going to likely fail. That's when it's going to take you longer to get a new unit, and that's when it's going to cost more. So preventative maintenance always is the focus of what these property assessments are going to do. We're going to invest in smart money being spent, as opposed to putting a Band-Aid on this and repairing it so we can get through our vacation with, some level of comfort. The other thing that people look past are contractors' documents, and these specifically refer to the insurance certificates and specifically to workers' comp. You're going to want to make sure that your contractors are insured and licensed in some states, California being specifically called out for some of the tougher contractor laws. You have to be licensed to sell landscape services. If you go to someone's home and represent a company, you have to have a license for that. So anything, I believe the contract amount is maybe anything over $500 that you sell to a homeowner to improve their home, you must have a license, or check into that and correct me if I'm wrong. The other thing is emergency preparedness plan. Now, no one thinks about this until it's too late, but that includes things like fire extinguishers. On this property last week, none of the contractors were charged with actually inspecting how many fire extinguishers, what type of extinguisher, when the last time any of the extinguishers were serviced. And certainly it is in everyone's best interest to have a safety inspection by the fire chief. Set an appointment with someone that does their property walks. My experience has been they are ever so pleased to come out and walk the property, know that they're welcome on the property, and that they are giving you their best advice to keep that home safe. Make sure also, if you have security gates, that you have a Knox box located so that they can open your gates. If you have a drowning, if you have to dial 911, if someone chokes or has a heart attack, they need to be able to get into your property very quickly. And Knox box allows them, first responders, to get in. Smoke detectors. If those aren't hardwired, and if they are, go ahead and test them with your security company. But if they're battery operated, make sure, if you are new to the property, change the batteries and make a reminder on your calendar. 1 year from now, you're going to change those batteries out. Fireplaces, huge miss. People just fire those up in the wintertime without having them inspected. A lot of them won't pass code because they were built with the original construction of the house, and those codes have changed dramatically. But there's many ways around that. And between repairs and safety features like spark arresters or ventless gas logs are all options for keeping fireplaces burning, keeping them within code restrictions, and keeping your home heated in that way. But one of the biggest misses that we found on this particular property, there were 2 double garage door openers. One of them, and the operators themselves looked old. The little glass panels where the plexiglass had covered the light bulbs was smoked and looked like it had aged tremendously and maybe turned a little yellow. But the springs themselves, and we experienced this in Tulsa, Oklahoma last week with the power outages. Many of my friends and family members, when they lost power, couldn't get their cars out of the garage because when they pulled the quick release handle, the springs no longer supported the weight of the garage doors, and so manually lifting those was no longer an option. So what we found last week at the property assessment that I did was that one of the mounting brackets to one of the ends of the springs was disconnected from the wall, and the bar that holds the springs was arced up. So right then and there, we pulled the car out, they shut down, and no one had looked at those particular items as a course of remodeling that entire property. No one's fault. We're not pointing any fingers, just saying that if those springs fail, break because they become brittle, if you pulled the quick release and something happened, those things fly. But many other things, like, do you know how to shut off your gas, your water, your electricity in case of a gas leak, a water leak, or an electrical fire? Look at each of those meters and make sure. I always do instructions on, do you turn it quarter turn, clockwise, counterclockwise, all of those things on a little laminated sheet of paper, in a notebook, at a mechanical room, inside of the water meter hole, whatever, is extremely helpful. Again, we're preparing for emergencies. The rest of these all apply to irrigation leaks, locks and keypads, steam showers, water filtration systems, that sort of thing. All important information. So think of these as your appliances, your mechanical equipment, your technology, your safety and security. And of course, number one always at the list is lowering the homeowner's risk in case of emergency. So create a simple Excel spreadsheet or download the spreadsheet that I'm going to have for you this week and go to it. It takes about a day to maybe go through these items and collect the information, but you'll be really glad that you did. Thanks for listening.